William Carter had built his life on one simple belief. Every problem had a logical explanation. Every risk could be measured. Every decision could be controlled. That belief had made him one of the most respected logistics executives in America. It had also made him a billionaire before his 60th birthday. His company managed thousands of trucks across the country, millions of deliveries every year, and contracts with businesses that trusted his judgment more than their own. For 35 years, logic had never failed him. Until a frightened 10-year-old boy stood in front of his car and shattered everything he believed. It was just after 7 on a cool October morning. William stepped out of the front door of his Connecticut estate, adjusting the cuff of his navy suit while reviewing the day's schedule on his phone. An investors' meeting in New York. Lunch with a shipping partner. A charity dinner that evening. Every hour had already been planned. His black sedan waited at the end of the circular driveway. The driver stood beside it with the rear door already open. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Then someone grabbed the sleeve of his jacket. "Mr. Carter." William turned. It was Noah. The quiet little boy whose mother had worked in the house for almost 3 years. Noah rarely spoke unless someone asked him a question. Today, his face had turned completely pale. His breathing came in short, uneven bursts. Before William could ask what was wrong, Noah shook his head violently. "Please." His voice trembled. "Don't get into that car." William frowned. "What?" "Please don't." The boy looked toward the waiting sedan, then quickly looked away again as if he were afraid even to see it. William crouched so they were eye level. "Noah." He smiled gently. "Tell me what's going on." The boy swallowed hard. "I can't." "You can." "No." His eyes filled with tears. "If they know I told you." He stopped himself. William felt something change inside him. Children could imagine monsters. Children could misunderstand conversations. But they could not fake fear like this. Behind them, the driver checked his watch. "Sir? We're running a little late." William raised one hand without taking his eyes off Noah. "Give me a minute." The boy suddenly grabbed William's wrist with surprising strength. "You always tell people to look twice before crossing the street." William blinked. It was something he often said during the company's annual safety campaigns. Noah remembered. "Please," the boy whispered. "Just look twice today." For a brief moment, William looked toward the sedan. Nothing seemed unusual. The windows were clean. The tires looked fine. The engine idled smoothly. Everything appeared exactly as it should. Yet Noah refused to let go of his sleeve. William had negotiated billion-dollar contracts by trusting small instincts that other people ignored. A delayed shipment. A missing signature. A supplier who smiled too quickly. The smallest details often carried the greatest danger. He straightened and looked at the driver. "I'll take another car." The driver's expression froze for the briefest fraction of a second. "So, today's trip is cancelled?" William noticed the wording. Not delayed. Not rescheduled. Cancelled. "I said another car." The driver forced a smile. "Of course, sir." William watched him walk away before turning back to Noah. "Come inside." The boy shook his head. "They'll see." "Who?" Noah looked toward the large windows of the mansion. His voice became almost inaudible. "I heard them talking last night." William's heartbeat slowed. "Them?" Noah nodded. "There was a lady." William waited. "And a man." "What did they say?" The boy closed his eyes tightly, trying to remember every word. "I couldn't hear everything." "What did you hear?" For several seconds, Noah said nothing. Then he repeated one sentence exactly as he had heard it. "Once his car reaches Blackwater Bridge, it will look like an accident." William felt the world around him become unnaturally still. Blackwater Bridge. No one outside his inner circle knew he would be driving that route this morning. No one. Noah looked up at him, terrified. I don't know what it means. I just knew. The boy's voice broke. You weren't supposed to get into that car. There is a quiet kind of courage that rarely makes the news. It doesn't wear a uniform or stand behind a podium. Sometimes it belongs to a child whose hands are shaking so badly he can barely finish a sentence. The remarkable thing about truth is that it doesn't ask whether the person carrying it is powerful. It only asks whether someone is brave enough to speak before it's too late. William didn't ask another question. Not yet. He placed a gentle hand on Noah's shoulder and guided him toward the side entrance of the mansion instead of the front door. The fewer people who noticed them together, the better. Inside, the kitchen was quiet except for the sound of coffee brewing. Noah's mother, Maria, looked up from the counter with surprise. Mr. Carter? Is everything all right? William forced a calm smile. I need to borrow Noah for a few minutes. Maria looked at her son, immediately noticing the fear on his face. What happened? It's nothing to worry about right now, William said softly. I'll explain later. He led Noah into his private study and quietly closed the door. The room suddenly felt much smaller. William sat across from the boy. Take a deep breath. Noah nodded. I need you to tell me exactly what happened last night. The boy stared at the floor. I couldn't sleep. Why not? I heard voices outside. William remained silent. I thought maybe Mom needed help. So you went downstairs? Noah nodded again. I stopped near the library. What time was it? I don't know. It was dark. William let the silence do the work. Children often remembered more when they weren't interrupted. I heard Mrs. Carter. My wife? Yes. Was she alone? No. The man sounded angry. What did he say? Noah squeezed his hands together. I only remember pieces. That's okay. The man said. He closed his eyes. Once his car reaches Blackwater Bridge. William felt the same chill he had experienced outside. What else? No one will question it. William didn't react. He simply listened. Mrs. Carter asked if everything was ready. And? The man laughed. Noah swallowed. He said. The replacement driver already knows what to do. William's expression remained calm. Inside, every instinct told him something was terribly wrong. The replacement driver? I think that's what he said. You didn't see the man's face? No. Did he see you? I don't think so. William slowly stood and walked toward the window overlooking the driveway. The black sedan was still waiting. The driver leaned casually against the car, checking his phone. Everything about him appeared perfectly normal. Too normal. William suddenly remembered something. James Turner. His regular driver. James had worked for him for almost 12 years. Every weekday, James greeted him with the same words. Morning, Mr. Carter. But this morning. The driver hadn't said that. William replayed the moment in his mind. Not only that. James always wore his wedding ring. The man outside hadn't. Such a small detail. One most people would never notice. William picked up his phone and searched for James' number. The call connected after 2 rings. Mr. Carter? William stopped breathing for half a second. James sounded confused. James, where are you? At home. Home? Your office texted yesterday afternoon. They said my services wouldn't be needed this week because you were traveling with the security team. William's grip tightened around the phone. I never sent that message. Silence. Then James quietly replied. I didn't think you did. William looked back toward Noah. The boy wasn't pretending. He wasn't imagining things. Someone had removed his trusted driver before sunrise. Someone had placed another man behind the wheel. And someone had expected William to get into that car without asking a single question. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. David. His attorney answered almost instantly. William? You're calling early. I need you to come to my house. Is something wrong? William watched the unfamiliar driver standing beside the waiting sedan. Don't come through the front gate. Another pause. Use the service entrance. David's voice became serious. I'll be there in 20 minutes. William ended the call. Then he looked at Noah. You did the right thing. The boy finally looked up. Are you mad? William shook his head. No. He smiled gently. I think you may have just saved my life. David Brooks arrived exactly 19 minutes later through the narrow service entrance behind the estate, just as William had instructed. The attorney had represented William for more than 20 years. He had handled acquisitions worth hundreds of millions of dollars, negotiated with international partners, and defended the Carter family's interests through every major business challenge. But William had never heard the concern in David's voice that morning. You sounded serious. William locked the study door behind him. I need you to listen before you ask questions. David nodded. For the next 10 minutes, William repeated everything Noah had told him, every word he remembered, and the unexpected phone call with James Turner. When he finished, the room fell silent. David leaned back slowly. If Noah is telling the truth. William interrupted. I believe he is. David didn't argue. Instead, he asked the question William had been asking himself. Who besides you knew today's route? William answered immediately. My executive assistant. My security director. Victoria. And James. No one else. David wrote each name on a yellow legal pad. Blackwater Bridge isn't part of your normal commute. No. You only changed today's route 3 days ago because of highway construction. William nodded. Which means whoever planned this had recent information. Neither man spoke for several moments. Finally David looked up. Have you confronted Victoria? No. Why not? Because if she's innocent, I'll destroy my marriage. And if she's guilty? I'll warn her that I know. David slowly folded his notebook shut. Good. William raised an eyebrow. You expected me to say that? I expected you to act emotionally. I almost did. David gave a faint smile. That's why we've worked together for 2 decades. William walked toward the window. The unfamiliar driver was gone. So was the black sedan. They've already left. David joined him. That tells us something. What? They expected you to be inside that car. William stared at the empty driveway. When you didn't appear. They abandoned the first plan. William understood immediately. If they had an accident without me, there would be questions. Exactly. Someone wasn't improvising. Someone had prepared this carefully. David turned back toward the desk. There's something else we need to verify. The insurance policies. William looked at him. You think this is financial? I think every investigation starts by asking who benefits. David opened his laptop and connected to the secure client portal. Within minutes he was reviewing documents William hadn't looked at in years. Most appeared routine. Then David stopped typing. His expression changed. What is it? Your life insurance. William frowned. What about it? It was amended. I don't remember approving any changes. David continued reading. The coverage increased from $12 million to $48 million. William stared at the screen. When? 8 months ago. Who requested the amendment? David scrolled farther. The paperwork shows your electronic authorization. I never signed it. The digital certificate appears valid. William's voice became very quiet. Who is the primary beneficiary? David already knew the answer before he spoke it. Victoria Carter. Neither man said a word. The number itself wasn't what unsettled William. $48 million meant nothing compared to the company he had built. What unsettled him was something else. Someone had quietly altered a major financial document. Someone had replaced his trusted driver. Someone had known his travel route. And somehow, a frightened 10-year-old boy had been the only person willing to tell him that something was terribly wrong. William picked up his phone again. This isn't enough. David looked at him. No. It isn't. We need to know who the man was with Victoria. David nodded. I know exactly who to call. He opened his contacts and selected a name William hadn't heard in years. Sarah Mitchell. Former federal investigator. The one person David trusted when the truth was buried beneath carefully constructed lies. 20 seconds later, Sarah answered. David didn't waste a single word. Sarah. We have a client whose life may depend on finding one man. Her reply was immediate. Send me everything you have. It starts today. Sarah Mitchell called back less than 30 minutes later. I've cleared my schedule. William placed the call on speaker as David opened a fresh notebook. Tell me everything, Sarah said. William summarized the morning from the beginning. Noah's warning. The unfamiliar driver. James Turner's phone call. The unexpected insurance changes. Sarah didn't interrupt once. When he finished, she asked only one question. Do you have a recent photo of the replacement driver? William thought for a moment. The security cameras. He immediately called the head of estate security. I need footage from the front entrance between 6:30 and 7:30 this morning. It'll take a few minutes, sir. Send it only to me. No one else. 10 minutes later, the video arrived. William paused the recording as the driver opened the rear door of the sedan. The man's face was clear. Sarah studied the image in silence. I've never seen him. Can you identify him? Not yet. But I can start. William emailed her the still image. Run everything. Facial recognition, DMV records, business licenses, prior arrests, employment databases. I'm on it. The call ended. For the first time that morning, William realized he was building two separate investigations. One centered on the mysterious driver. The other centered on Victoria. He wasn't sure which frightened him more. Just after noon, Victoria called. Her voice sounded warm, almost cheerful. How was your meeting? William closed his eyes for a brief second. He had spent 32 years recognizing every change in his wife's voice. Today, he heard none. She sounded exactly as she always had. It was postponed. Oh. The investors had a scheduling conflict. I'm sorry. I'll survive. She laughed softly. When will you be home? William glanced at David. David slowly shook his head, reminding him to reveal nothing. I'll probably be working most of the afternoon. I'll have dinner ready. I'd like that. They exchanged a few ordinary sentences before ending the call. William set his phone down. If I hadn't heard Noah, I would have believed every word. David nodded. That's what makes deception dangerous. It looks exactly like normal life. Late that afternoon, Sarah called again. I have something. William immediately answered. Go ahead. The driver's name isn't real. What do you mean? The driver's license belongs to a man who died 6 years ago in Arizona. William exchanged a glance with David. So someone stole his identity. Yes. And that's not the interesting part. William waited. I found the vehicle. The black sedan? No. The SUV that dropped the fake driver at your estate this morning. William leaned forward. It was rented yesterday. By whom? A shell company. Name? Northridge Consulting. David began typing immediately. Never heard of it. You haven't, Sarah replied. Because it has existed for only 11 days. Another carefully prepared step. Another false identity. Another layer. William began to understand what he was facing. This wasn't a crime born from impulse. It had been planned. Patiently. Methodically. Almost professionally. Sarah continued. I also checked Northridge Consulting. And? It has one listed corporate officer. Who? The documents identify him as Michael Hayes. William recognized nothing about the name. Any history? I'm still digging. But something feels wrong. What is it? The paperwork is almost too clean. No traffic tickets. No lawsuits. No social media. No employment history. No family. No photographs before 3 years ago. David quietly spoke. A ghost. Sarah agreed. Either the luckiest man in America. Or someone who spent years making sure no one could discover who he used to be. William walked back toward the window overlooking the long driveway. The estate looked peaceful. Gardeners trimmed hedges. Delivery trucks came and went. Housekeepers moved through the halls. Everything appeared exactly as it had the day before. Yet somewhere beyond those gates. A man with a stolen identity. A fake driver. And perhaps even his own wife. Were waiting for him to make the next move. William made his decision. We're done reacting. David looked at him. What are you thinking? William's expression became calm again. If someone spent months planning against me. He turned back toward his attorney. It's time they started believing their plan is still working. William understood one thing better than anyone in business. The moment your opponent realized you knew the truth, the game changed. So he decided not to change the game at all. That evening, he returned home at exactly the same time he always did. Victoria was waiting in the dining room. The table was beautifully set. Candles flickered softly. A bottle of wine rested beside 2 glasses, just as it had on countless evenings before. She smiled the moment he walked in. Long day? William loosened his tie and smiled back. The usual. She stepped closer and kissed his cheek. I'm glad you're home. So am I. For a brief moment, William wondered if everything Noah had told him could somehow be wrong. Victoria looked exactly like the woman he had loved for more than 30 years. Warm. Graceful. Comfortable. Nothing about her suggested fear or guilt. During dinner, they talked about ordinary things. A charity fundraiser next month. Their daughter's upcoming visit from California. The new greenhouse Victoria wanted to build. She laughed. He laughed. To anyone watching, they looked like a happy couple enjoying another quiet evening together. But William noticed something different. Victoria asked 3 separate questions about his schedule for the rest of the week. What time is your Chicago meeting? Are you still driving yourself on Friday? Have you decided whether to take the lake route next week? Individually, the questions meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern. She wasn't making conversation. She was collecting information. William answered each question naturally, giving her exactly what he wanted her to believe. Friday should be normal. I'll probably leave around 8. I might even stop by Blackwater Lake afterward. It's been years since I've driven that road. Victoria nodded casually. I always liked that drive. William smiled. So did I. Neither of them mentioned the conversation again. Late that night, after Victoria had gone upstairs, William quietly slipped into his study. David was already waiting on a secure video call. How did dinner go? Better than I expected. You think she believes you? I think she believes nothing has changed. David nodded. Good. Before either man could continue, another notification appeared on William's screen. Sarah Mitchell. She looked more serious than before. I've identified Michael Hayes. William leaned forward. Tell me. The name is fake. We expected that. So is almost everything else. She opened several files on her screen. The earliest record of Michael Hayes exists only 3 years ago. What about before that? Nothing. No tax history. No school records. No military service. No credit history. William frowned. That's impossible. Sarah nodded. It usually is. She clicked another document. I finally found a fingerprint match. The room became completely quiet. The real name is Adrian Holst. David immediately began searching. Sarah continued. He has used at least 4 identities over the past 15 years. What kind of crimes? Mostly financial fraud. She paused. But that's not what concerns me. William waited. Sarah opened another file. 3 photographs appeared side by side. 3 different women. 3 different cities. 3 different years. What am I looking at? Each woman was married to a wealthy businessman. William studied the photographs. What happened to them? They all lost their husbands. Accidents? Sarah nodded slowly. 1 boating accident. 1 vehicle crash. 1 mountain road collision. William felt the room grow colder. Were they prosecuted? No. There wasn't enough evidence. But Adrian Holst appeared in every investigation. As a business consultant. A financial advisor. A family friend. Always close enough to benefit. Never close enough to be charged. David looked away from the screen. This isn't his first attempt. Sarah met William's eyes. No. I don't think you're his target. William frowned. What do you mean? I think. She hesitated for the first time that day. You're simply the next name on a list that has been growing for years. Sarah's words stayed with William long after the call ended. Asterisk, you're simply the next name on a list. Asterisk. For years, he had believed success came with predictable risks. Lawsuits. Competitors. Economic downturns. He had never imagined becoming part of someone's carefully repeated pattern. David closed his laptop. If Sarah is right, we need federal authorities. William slowly shook his head. Not yet. David frowned. We have a fake identity. A replaced driver. An altered insurance policy. And a possible conspiracy. What more do you need? William looked out the study window into the darkness. Proof. Right now we have pieces. I need the whole picture. David knew that look. William wasn't being stubborn. He was being methodical. The same patience that had built his company was now shaping his response. The next morning, William followed his normal routine. He left the house at the usual time. He drove to corporate headquarters. He attended meetings. He answered emails. Anyone watching him would see a man whose life had returned to normal. That was exactly what he wanted. Late that afternoon, Sarah called again. I found something you need to see. An hour later, the 3 of them met inside Sarah's small office in Hartford. Unlike William's polished corporate headquarters, Sarah's office was simple. A metal desk. 2 filing cabinets. Maps covering 1 wall. Everything existed for one purpose. Finding answers. She spread several photographs across the table. They all have one thing in common. William studied the pictures. Different cities. Different families. Different years. What am I missing? Sarah pointed to the first photograph. This businessman died in what investigators called a brake failure. She pointed to the second. This one drove into a construction barrier. Then the third. This one lost control near a lakeside road. William looked at her. They're all traffic accidents. Sarah nodded. But look closer. She placed maintenance reports beside each photograph. Every victim's regular driver had been unavailable shortly before the accident. One called in sick. One resigned unexpectedly. One took emergency family leave. William slowly leaned back. The drivers were removed first. Sarah nodded again. Exactly. David looked at William. Just like James. Sarah continued. Adrian Holst never starts with the victim. He starts with the routine. William repeated the sentence quietly. The routine. Everything suddenly made sense. Every successful executive depended on routine. The same driver. The same schedule. The same habits. Break the routine. Replace one trusted person. And nobody notices until it's too late. Sarah handed William another folder. This came from a financial investigator. Inside were insurance records from the previous cases. William's eyes narrowed. Every policy had been increased within a year before the victim's death. Every beneficiary was the spouse. Every amendment looked perfectly legitimate. David whispered. It's the same blueprint. Every single time. Sarah nodded. And there's something else. She opened a notebook filled with handwritten timelines. Adrian never works alone. William looked up. You found partners? I found patterns. In every case, someone inside the family's circle unknowingly provided information. A secretary. A personal assistant. A neighbor. Someone close enough to know daily routines. William's expression changed. You think Victoria has been feeding him information? Sarah answered carefully. I think someone has. The question is whether she knows she's helping a criminal. Or believes she's helping someone she trusts. The room fell silent. For the first time, William considered a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to imagine. What if Victoria wasn't the architect? What if she had become part of someone else's plan without seeing the entire picture? David broke the silence. How do we find out? William looked down at the photographs one final time. Then he made his decision. We stop chasing Adrian. Sarah looked surprised. What? We already know how he operates. William closed the folder. If I want to understand this plan, I need to understand the person inside my own house. Because no matter how carefully Adrian Holst had prepared his scheme, someone had opened the front door for him. And William intended to discover who that person truly was. William didn't confront Victoria. He watched her. For the next 3 days, he became a student of the woman he had shared his life with for more than 3 decades. Not once did he search her phone. Not once did he follow her. Instead, he paid attention to the small things most husbands stopped noticing years earlier. She checked her phone more often. She stepped outside whenever certain calls came in. She had begun asking casual questions about his meetings, his travel plans, even the routes his drivers preferred. None of it proved anything. But together, the pieces no longer felt random. On Thursday afternoon, William deliberately created an opportunity. At dinner, he looked up from his plate. I've decided to visit our distribution center near Blackwater Lake next Tuesday. Victoria looked surprised. I thought that trip was cancelled. I changed my mind. She smiled politely. I hope the weather cooperates. William nodded and changed the subject. He never mentioned the trip again. 2 hours later, Sarah called. I think your wife just made contact. William immediately closed the study door. What happened? We've been monitoring Adrian's known associates. One of their prepaid phones became active 23 minutes after your dinner conversation. William didn't interrupt. The phone traveled west. Toward Blackwater Lake. David, who was listening beside him, quietly looked at William. The bait had worked. But it still wasn't enough. William asked the question that mattered most. Was Victoria the one who called? Sarah answered honestly. I don't know. The phone records don't show names. But the timing isn't a coincidence. William remained silent. He had built an empire by refusing to confuse coincidence with evidence. Timing created suspicion. Evidence created certainty. He still needed certainty. The following morning, another unexpected piece of the puzzle arrived. James Turner came to the estate. William invited him into the garage, away from the main house. James looked uncomfortable. I've been thinking about something. What is it? The text message. William waited. I deleted it after I received it. I figured it came from the office. But... James hesitated. I remembered something strange. What? The number wasn't saved in my phone. William frowned. So why did you trust it? Because whoever sent it knew exactly how your office writes internal messages. James pulled out his phone. I recovered it from my cloud backup. William carefully read the message. It looked authentic. The company logo. The formatting. Even the signature line. Everything matched. Except one detail. The sender's email address contained one extra letter. Almost invisible. Easy to miss. William handed the phone to David. This wasn't sent by our office. No. It was designed to look like it. James quietly added. I almost ignored it. What changed your mind? The message said you personally approved it. William slowly nodded. Someone had studied his company. Someone knew his employees. Someone understood exactly how trust worked inside his organization. This wasn't simply an attack against his family. It was an attack against every routine he had built over 35 years. That afternoon, Sarah called again. I found Adrian. William's pulse quickened. Where? A motel outside New Haven. Can you arrest him? No. He checked out 2 hours ago. She paused. But he left something behind. What? A visitor log. William leaned forward. Did anyone visit him? Sarah took a slow breath before answering. Yes. Who? The name written in the log is Victoria Carter. The room fell completely silent. David looked toward William but said nothing. James lowered his eyes. For several seconds, William simply stared at the photograph Sarah had just sent. The signature looked like Victoria's. The date matched. The timing fit. Everything pointed in one direction. And yet, after 32 years of marriage, one thought refused to leave his mind. If Victoria truly wanted him gone, why had she spent the last 3 decades helping him build the life she now supposedly wanted to destroy? For the first time, William wasn't questioning the evidence. He was questioning whether he truly understood the woman he had loved all these years. William barely slept that night. The motel visitor log remained open on his desk. Victoria Carter. Written in neat handwriting. The signature looked authentic. The date matched. Everything pointed toward the conclusion everyone else had already reached. David was convinced. Sarah believed the evidence was becoming overwhelming. Even James quietly admitted he could no longer defend Victoria. But William couldn't force himself to stop asking one question. Why? Not why someone would want his money. That part was obvious. Why Victoria? He had spent 32 years with her. She had stood beside him when the company nearly failed. She had worked late nights helping him organize paperwork before they could afford assistance. She had celebrated every victory and endured every setback. People could change. William knew that. But they rarely changed overnight. There had to be a bridge between the woman he married and the woman the evidence now described. The next morning, Sarah arrived with another report. I dug deeper into Adrian Holst. William motioned for her to continue. I found financial transfers. To Victoria? Sarah shook her head. No. That's what's strange. There aren't any. David looked surprised. None? Not a single payment. No hidden accounts. No expensive gifts. No unusual purchases. William slowly folded his hands. If she was helping him, what was she getting? Sarah nodded. Exactly. Every fraud leaves a financial trail. This one doesn't. For the first time in 2 days, William felt a small shift inside him. Not relief. Hope. Tiny, fragile hope. David looked unconvinced. Money isn't always the motivation. No, William agreed. But someone taking this kind of risk usually expects something in return. Sarah opened another folder. I also interviewed 2 people who knew Adrian under another identity. What did they say? They described the same pattern. He never started with money. He started with trust. William listened carefully. He would spend months becoming someone's closest advisor. Then, he slowly convinced them everyone else was lying. Friends. Family. Business partners. Little by little, the victim stopped trusting the people who actually cared. William stared silently at the photographs on Sarah's desk. He remembered the past year. Victoria had become increasingly worried. She had asked whether younger executives wanted him to retire. Whether the board appreciated everything he had built. Whether people secretly thought he was becoming too old. At the time, he believed those conversations came from concern. Now, he wasn't so sure where the ideas had begun. Sarah continued. Adrian doesn't create greed. He creates fear. He finds whatever people are afraid of. And quietly feeds it. William whispered almost to himself. Fear is easier to control than greed. Sarah looked at him. I think your wife may have believed she was protecting something. Before anyone could respond, William's phone rang. It was Victoria. He answered normally. Hi. William. Her voice sounded nervous. I was wondering. Yes? Are you still planning to drive to Blackwater Lake on Tuesday? William paused just long enough to sound natural. I think so. I may leave a little earlier. I'll let you know. Another brief silence. Then Victoria said something that caught him completely off guard. Please. Her voice almost broke. Be careful. The call ended. William slowly lowered the phone. David frowned. She's warning you? I don't know. Sarah looked thoughtful. Or she's making sure you'll go. Both explanations made sense. That was the problem. William walked to the window and looked across the estate. Somewhere beyond those trees, Adrian Holst was waiting for his next move. Somewhere inside this house, Victoria was carrying a truth she still hadn't revealed. And for the first time since Noah stopped him in the driveway, William realized he wasn't trying to solve one mystery. He was trying to solve 2. One would tell him who wanted to destroy his life. The other would tell him whether the woman he loved was his greatest betrayal. Or his greatest misunderstanding. Tuesday arrived with clear skies and unusually cool air. William woke before sunrise. For nearly an hour, he sat alone in his study without turning on the lights. Everything had led to this day. Noah's warning. The replacement driver. The altered insurance policy. Adrian Holst. Victoria's unexplained meeting. Every piece now pointed toward Blackwater Lake. At exactly 7 o'clock, David and Sarah arrived through the service entrance. James Turner was already waiting in the garage beside William's SUV. Sarah spread a map across the workbench. "Here's the plan." She pointed to the narrow highway leading toward Blackwater Lake. "This is the only section with limited visibility." Her finger stopped at a sharp curve overlooking the water. "If someone intends to force a crash, this is where they'll do it." William studied the map. "Where will your team be?" "Unmarked vehicles. Far enough away not to attract attention. Close enough to respond immediately." David looked at William. "You can still cancel." William slowly shook his head. "If I cancel now, they disappear. And we start over." No one argued. They all understood. This wasn't about taking unnecessary risks. It was about ending the threat before someone else became the next target. Before leaving, William walked into the kitchen. Maria was preparing breakfast. Noah sat quietly at the table, finishing his cereal before school. The boy looked up the moment William entered. "You're going today?" It wasn't a question. William smiled gently. "Yes." Noah climbed down from his chair. For a moment, he simply stood there. Then he reached into his pocket and handed William a small wooden cross tied to a worn leather cord. "My grandfather made it." William looked surprised. "I want you to have it." "I can't take this." "You can." The boy smiled shyly. It always made Grandpa feel brave. William accepted it without another word. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you." As he walked toward the front door, Noah called after him. "Mr. Carter?" William turned. "Come home." Those two simple words stayed with him all morning. At precisely 8 o'clock, William's SUV rolled out of the estate. James drove. William sat in the back seat exactly as he always had. Nothing about the scene suggested anything unusual. A few hundred yards behind them, Sarah's team followed in 2 unmarked vehicles. Another unit waited farther ahead near Blackwater Lake. The first 30 miles passed quietly. Traffic remained light. James kept a steady speed. Neither man spoke much. Then William noticed a dark pickup truck appear in the side mirror. It stayed several car lengths behind them. Not overtaking. Not falling back. Simply following. James noticed it too. "You see that?" William nodded. "Don't react." 5 minutes later, a second vehicle merged onto the highway ahead of them. A white cargo van. It settled into the lane just in front of James. The distance between the 3 vehicles slowly narrowed. James spoke quietly. "This doesn't feel right." William reached into his pocket and pressed the silent emergency transmitter Sarah had given him that morning. No sound. No flashing light. Just a silent signal. Less than 30 seconds later, Sarah's voice came through a concealed earpiece. "We see them. Stay on course." The road curved gently toward the lake. Trees became thicker. Guardrails appeared along the shoulder. Blackwater Bridge was less than a mile away. Suddenly, the white cargo van slowed dramatically. James eased off the accelerator. At that exact moment, the pickup truck accelerated from behind. It moved into the opposite lane. Not to pass. To block. James tightened both hands on the steering wheel. "They're boxing us in." William looked straight ahead. For the first time since this nightmare began, the people behind the plan had finally stepped out of the shadows. And somewhere behind the wheel of one of those vehicles, Adrian Holst was almost certainly watching, convinced that William Carter had driven straight into the trap he had spent months preparing. James reacted instantly. Instead of braking hard, he eased off the accelerator just enough to create space. The white cargo van continued slowing in front of them. The pickup remained beside them, blocking any chance of changing lanes. They've practiced this, James said calmly. William nodded. They're trying to control our speed. Sarah's voice came through the earpiece. William, hold your position. We're 30 seconds behind you. William looked into the side mirror. There was still no sign of Sarah's vehicles. Only the pickup. The cargo van. And the narrow road leading toward Blackwater Bridge. The pickup suddenly drifted closer, forcing James toward the guardrail. James kept both hands steady. They want us against the edge. William reached into his pocket and pressed the emergency transmitter a second time. This time, Sarah responded immediately. We have visual confirmation. Do not attempt to escape. Repeat, do not attempt to escape. James smiled slightly. I wasn't planning to. William glanced at him. You seem surprisingly calm. James kept his eyes on the road. I've driven for you for 12 years. I know how you think. William couldn't help smiling. And? You wouldn't bring me here without a plan. For the first time that morning, William relaxed. He wasn't facing this alone. As they entered Blackwater Bridge, the cargo van came to a complete stop. Traffic behind them immediately backed up. The pickup angled across the center line, sealing the bridge. 3 men stepped out. All wearing dark jackets. None carrying visible weapons. One of them slowly approached William's side of the SUV. James whispered. That's him. William recognized the face from Sarah's investigation. Adrian Holst. Adrian smiled through the closed window. Then he raised one hand. Almost politely. William lowered the window halfway. I was wondering if we'd finally meet. Adrian smiled. Mr. Carter. I appreciate your cooperation. I didn't have much choice. Oh, you always had a choice. William studied him carefully. Adrian looked exactly like the kind of man who disappeared into a crowd. Ordinary. Forgettable. That, William realized, was probably his greatest advantage. Adrian leaned closer. This ends very simply. You step out. We talk. And everyone goes home. William smiled. I don't think that's your plan. Adrian's smile faded. No. It isn't. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then William asked the question that had haunted him for days. Why me? Adrian laughed softly. Wrong question. What should I be asking? You should be asking. Who convinced your wife that you stopped loving her? William felt his heartbeat slow. So it was you. I never forced Victoria to believe anything. I simply listened. I found her fears. I gave them a voice. William remembered every conversation over the past year. Every doubt. Every misunderstanding. Every unnecessary argument. Small things. Growing slowly. Like cracks spreading through glass. Adrian continued. People don't betray each other overnight. They drift. My job is simply to give them a gentle push. Before William could answer, Sarah's voice suddenly echoed through the earpiece. Now. Almost instantly, 4 unmarked SUVs surged onto both ends of the bridge. Red and blue emergency lights flashed. The cargo van tried to reverse. Too late. The pickup attempted to turn around. Blocked. Within seconds, officers surrounded every vehicle. The 3 men froze. Adrian didn't run. He simply looked at William and smiled one last time. I told Victoria something years ago. William remained silent. I said the day would come when you trust strangers more than your own family. His smile widened. And judging by the look on your face, I almost succeeded. Officers moved in and secured Adrian without resistance. James finally let out a long breath. It's over. William looked at the quiet water beneath Blackwater Bridge. No. He slowly opened the passenger door. This part is. He turned towards Sarah as she stepped out of the lead vehicle. Now we find out whether Victoria was my enemy. Or Adrian's final victim. The drive back from Blackwater Bridge was quieter than anyone expected. Adrian Holst sat in the back of a police vehicle without saying another word. His 3 accomplices had already begun talking to investigators. The carefully planned operation that had taken months to prepare had fallen apart in less than 10 minutes. Yet William didn't feel victorious. One question still remained unanswered. Victoria. When he arrived home, several unmarked police vehicles were already parked outside the estate. David met him at the front door. They're inside. William nodded. He stepped into the living room. Victoria was sitting on the sofa with 2 detectives nearby. She wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't crying. She simply looked exhausted. The moment she saw William, she stood. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, William broke the silence. Did you know? Victoria lowered her eyes. I knew there was a plan. William closed his eyes briefly. But not all of it. She shook her head. I never believed anyone would actually get hurt. William looked at her quietly. Then what did you believe? Victoria's voice trembled. I believed you were leaving me. The room fell silent. She slowly sat back down. About 18 months ago, Adrian contacted me. He introduced himself as a financial consultant. He said he had worked with several executive families. I almost ignored him. What changed? He knew things. What kind of things? He knew about your business trips. He knew about the board. He knew our arguments. William frowned. Arguments that only we knew about. Victoria nodded. I thought someone inside the company was talking to him. He told me people close to you believed you were preparing to retire. He said you had already met with attorneys. He convinced me you were secretly changing your estate plans. William looked toward David. David slowly shook his head. None of it had ever happened. Victoria continued. Every time I doubted him, he showed me something that looked real. Emails. Meeting schedules. Financial summaries. Photographs taken outside William's office. Everything carefully selected. Everything believable. He never asked me for money. He never pressured me. He simply kept telling me that one day I'd wake up with nothing. William understood exactly what Sarah had meant. Adrian didn't begin with greed. He began with fear. Victoria wiped away a tear. When he suggested increasing your insurance coverage, he said it was only to protect the company if something unexpected happened. I signed the paperwork because I thought that's what responsible spouses did. William asked quietly. And Blackwater Bridge? Victoria covered her face with her hands. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He told me someone wanted to frighten you into retiring. He said no one would be injured. William searched her face. For 32 years he had learned to recognize when Victoria was hiding disappointment. When she was embarrassed. When she was genuinely afraid. The woman sitting in front of him wasn't pretending. She was broken. One of the detectives finally spoke. We've already confirmed several parts of her statement. Adrian used fabricated documents. He impersonated financial advisors. He manipulated electronic communications. The evidence matches what we found in previous investigations. William slowly sat across from Victoria. I wish you had talked to me. Fresh tears filled her eyes. I wish I had trusted you. Neither sentence could undo what had happened. But both were true. Later that evening, after the detectives had left, William stood alone in the garden. Noah quietly walked over and stood beside him. Is everything okay now? William looked at the boy. The danger is over. Noah smiled. I knew you'd come home. William reached into his pocket and felt the small wooden cross Noah had given him that morning. It reminded him that courage often arrived without warning. Sometimes wearing an expensive suit. Sometimes carrying a detective's badge. And sometimes looking like a frightened 10-year-old boy who simply refused to stay silent. Several months passed before life began to feel familiar again. The investigation uncovered far more than William had imagined. Adrian Holst had spent nearly 15 years moving from state to state under different identities. He carefully studied successful families, learned their routines, and searched for the smallest cracks in their relationships. He rarely invented problems. Instead, he quietly magnified fears that already existed until trust slowly disappeared. Investigators reopened several older cases connected to his previous identities. Former business associates came forward. Financial records were reviewed. Victims who had once believed they would never learn the truth finally began receiving answers. William followed the news from a distance. For the first time in decades, he no longer felt responsible for solving every problem himself. Some things belonged in the hands of the justice system. Others belonged inside a family. Victoria accepted responsibility for the choices she had made. She never tried to excuse them. During many long conversations, she admitted how fear had slowly replaced communication. Every unanswered question became an assumption. Every assumption became another brick in a wall separating two people who had once trusted each other completely. William listened more than he spoke. Forgiveness did not arrive in a single afternoon. Neither did healing. Both required honesty. Both required time. Meanwhile, Carter Logistics continued operating without interruption. The board praised William for remaining calm throughout the crisis, but he knew the real credit belonged elsewhere. James Turner returned as his full-time driver. The first morning James parked outside the house again, both men smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." It was the greeting William had heard thousands of times before. Strangely, it had never sounded so comforting. James laughed. "I suppose you're checking for my wedding ring now." William smiled. "You know me too well." Some routines, he realized, deserved to be protected. Others deserved to be questioned. Maria and Noah continued living in the small guest cottage on the estate. But their lives changed in ways neither of them expected. William established an education fund that would cover Noah's schooling through college. When Maria thanked him, William gently shook his head. "You don't owe me thanks. I'm the one who was given a second chance." Noah remained the same quiet, thoughtful boy he had always been. He never bragged about what had happened. Whenever people called him a hero, he simply smiled shyly and changed the subject. One Saturday afternoon, William found Noah sitting beneath an old oak tree with a stack of library books. "What are you reading?" Noah held up a book about bridges. "I wanted to understand how they're built." William laughed softly. "After everything that happened at Blackwater Bridge?" Noah nodded. "I guess I don't like being afraid of things I don't understand." William sat beside him. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence felt peaceful. Finally, Noah looked over. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know to believe me?" William smiled. "I didn't." Noah looked confused. "I believed your fear." He pointed toward the old oak tree. "When people make up stories, they usually look to see if someone believes them. You never did. You only wanted me to be safe." Noah thought quietly about those words. "I almost didn't say anything. I was scared." "I know. What if I'd stayed quiet?" William looked across the wide green lawn stretching toward the front gate. "Then neither of us would be sitting here today." The afternoon breeze rustled the leaves above them. Life had returned to normal in many ways. Delivery trucks still arrived every morning. Business meetings filled William's calendar. Neighbors waved as they always had. From the outside, everything looked exactly the same. But William had changed. Success had taught him how to recognize opportunity. That autumn taught him how to recognize truth. And sometimes, truth arrives from the person everyone else overlooks. Not because they are the loudest. Not because they are the most powerful. But because they choose courage over silence. There is one lesson I hope you carry with you after hearing this story. Trust is built through countless ordinary moments, but it can be weakened when fear is allowed to speak louder than honest conversation. The strongest families are not the ones that never face doubt. They are the ones willing to speak openly before doubt grows into distance. And every now and then, the voice that changes everything belongs to the one nobody expected to hear.